Good morning, everybody. Hopefully I've had a chance to meet everybody. Those I haven't, I will meet afterwards. I'm Duncan Reid, DeltaMech Services. Most of my work for the last 5 years has been in conjunction with the Carbon Trust, conducting the energy audits that one of the products that they offer. We heard from Esther earlier on about the various products that they offer to help people save energy. The Carbon Trust funded carbon surveys are one of them. They're available for companies spending from £30,000 up to £500,000 per year. Up to 150k it would be a one-day carbon survey, and from 150k to 500k it would be what they call an opportunity assessment. The one-day carbon survey is a fairly brief look. We're obviously commissioned to spend half a day on site and half a day to compile a report. What I'm doing, I'm sending two of the reports around, so hopefully as I'm speaking you'll get a chance to have a look. Opportunity assessments, obviously they go from 2 days upwards. The more you spend, the more days you get. And obviously the more days you get, the more in depth I can go to look at the energy saving opportunities. I like to think in this context that I almost pull all the technologies together that we've seen this morning, in as much as I would take an overall view and analyse the whole of the business to identify all the savings that could be made. Typically, it's been my experience, and I've done about 150 of these surveys over the last 5 years, 20 to 30% savings in the process and manufacturing industries. And obviously, my currency is kilowatt hours saving, but if you're saving energy, you're saving cost and you're saving CO2. Cost saving is obviously of interest to us all. CO2 emission saving is going to be of interest to us if we've got climate change levy agreements, if we're under the CRC, or whether you've got your own internal emissions reduction policy, so good PR. So what do you get if you apply for a carbon survey? I produce a written report, so hopefully have a look at that. Within that is an action plan with technical details on the initiatives and also calculations of savings, paybacks, etc. This is a typical action plan that I would produce, and that's one from a one-day carbon survey. Hopefully you can see, can you read at the back there? Can you read the smaller writing? The first line is improved energy management practices, and that's something that we have to put in as the first line. So I'll make an appraisal of what you're doing at the moment in terms of energy management, monitoring and targeting, staff awareness, training, that kind of thing. And we put a figure in to highlight savings through good energy management. The rest of the items are site-specific. So for this particular site, we recognised there was a compressed air leakage problem, installation of photocell control, so that's lux sensing, light sensing, to workshop lighting. That one was it was a very high, sort of heavy industry workshop actually down in Ipswich, and they had got, I think, 33 400 watt sons. They've got very good day lighting and high window lighting, and we actually took a lux meter reading. We were getting 1,000 lux at desk level. 500 lux is the recommended level for an office, so we're probably getting 500 lux there at the moment. We turned the lights off and we lost 100 lux. So we still had 900 lux. Now that company were running 33 400 watt bulbs from morning till night, regardless of whether they needed it. So we touched on that with Richard on the LED lighting. So we're looking at that. Now those are high bays. When they turn off, they would need to stay off for a certain length of time. If you've got high frequency T5s or LEDs, then obviously they lend themselves to control technology better because they are instant strike, instant on off. Upgrade of lighting to the high bay, that was going to, in actual fact, to fluorescent lighting. They were operating only 8 hours a day. The payback to go to T5 was a little bit better, sorry Richard, than going to LEDs. but obviously extended hours improves the payback of LED lighting. Installation of gas-fired radiant heating. This was quite an unusual application. They'd got warm air heaters which they fitted 3 years ago. They'd got a very high building with a very high apex. They'd also got cross-flow ventilation. They did a lot of welding, and so they'd got louvers on one side of the building drawing air with extraction fans across the others. So they were actually affecting a cross-flow ventilation to take welding fumes, and they were using warm air heating. So you can guess what was happening. Warm air was going in, it was going up, and it was getting sucked straight out. So I looked at the alternatives and suggested that radiant heating would be more suitable, and obviously you can see the savings. Installation of a variable speed compressor, again, standard types of energy savings. So the table in all gives you an estimation of cost saving, CO2 saving, kilowatt hour saving, an estimation of the cost to implement, and obviously paybacks. So hopefully that is a useful starting point or an overview of the situation within your business. Survey report and process. Accompanied site survey. Normally minimum of 2 hours, certainly for a one-day survey, depending on the size and the complexity of the site. I'm a mechanical engineer. I used to be in the design side within the process industry. So if I see something that interests me, we'll probably go off at a tangent and I'll want to look at conveyorage and that kind of thing. But generally 2 hours on site gives me a good insight of how the processes work. And obviously I would be wanting to look at all the processes that consume energy. So boilers, compressors, refrigeration. I want to establish where you're using your energy, because that points me to where the savings may be made. Analysis of a year's worth of consumption data. That's the base data I work on. And if you apply for a survey, the first thing I will ask for is, can you have prepared for me a copy of a year's worth of invoices? And I want to glean from that your monthly consumption of kilowatt hours, electricity, oil, gas, etc. I then look at that and try and identify trends, consumption patterns. I'll do degree day analysis if you're heating your factory to see if the heating is following the prevailing weather. And I'll also calculate benchmarks and KPI. So these may be production based, you may have your own key performance indicators. If you have a climate change levy agreement, you will have some kind of benchmark with your trade association. So we look at the benchmarks, we can compare your industry to like industries, but generally I recommend that you use the benchmark as the starting point from which to measure future improvements. If you want to know how successful you've been at reducing energy, you need to know a starting point. Typical office-based benchmarks would be kilowatt hours per metre squared per year. We might look at a production, maybe per tonne of meat processed or something. If the level of production is your energy driver, we would try and link your energy consumption with your production to actually give an idea of your productivity. I did a recent one at a company in Loddon, and they make parts for aircrafts and the automotive racing industry in carbon fibre. We couldn't really look at a production benchmark because every piece was different. But they did say sometimes we work one shift, sometimes we work 2 shifts. So I said, well, give me your man hours per month. And we married up the man hours per month with the electricity consumption, and we found out that we had an absolute straight graph. And it was such a good correlation. I said to them, if you tell me how many man hours you've worked, I can actually tell you what your electricity bill should be. So you've then got a predictive model and you're in control of your consumption. And we look to do that with all forms of energy. I then continue to list the potential energy savings. I'll then research and do my calculations to provide you the detail. I may get budget quotations from suppliers to help with the cost, compile the action plan, and then write up the description of the initiatives. After the report, there is some further support from the Carbon Trust. If you spend, I believe, at the moment above 75,000, the Carbon Trust will fund what they call a post-survey briefing, which is another day for myself to come in and I'll present the findings of the report. And it's quite a useful tool, I find. Often I deal with the factory manager at the site level survey. In the post-survey briefing, it's good to get the directors and the decision makers involved, because then you can enthuse them and explain to them the cost benefits, etc. So that can be quite useful. Carbon Trust loan application assistance. At the moment, I'm helping 2 companies with loans. I've put these in green. There's some in green there that aren't funded and they will come under my other services. At the moment, I'm helping people to do that without charge. We'll see how onerous the loan application process is, and if it's not too onerous, I'm quite happy to help people where I can. If it does become onerous, then I may have to introduce a charge for it. Also, possibly fully funded by the Carbon Trust are staff awareness and energy manager training. If it's an area that you feel that you'll benefit from, certainly in the office commercial type environment, schools, local authority, staff awareness is really quite critical. In an office, the heating, the lighting, the air conditioning, the computers are really on for the benefit of the employees. Whereas within industry, the energy users are your production machines. So you may feel that you want some energy manager training, and I do 2 seminars, 1 on each for those, and we may be able to get some funding for that. This is my cell now. Other energy management services that I offer. Monthly energy management package. Many companies realise and appreciate that they could do with some sort of energy management, but they can't justify either a full-time or even a part-time energy manager. And very often the task of energy management is bolted on to the HR or the health and safety, and it tends not to get done. And very often the person who has been lumbered with energy management has got other fires to fight, and it does deflect from core business. So I offer my services a day a month, and I would come in, do the energy management, but also try and save some energy as well to cover my costs. Carbon footprint calculation, again, you may want to do this for your own efforts to reduce CO2. I can help on that. CRC and Carbon Trust Standard. Possibly, I don't know if any of you here are going to get gathered up under the CRC. I'm a Carbon Trust Standard assessor as well as a Carbon Trust accredited energy auditor, so I can actually help and advise on getting through the Carbon Trust Standard. And also, as an engineer, I can look at project design and specification.